Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be repotting my Trident Maple. And maples need frequent repotting because they grow quite a large root system very quickly. So today I want to balance that root system, get it pruned up, ready to grow for another season. Here is a look at the tree. And if I wiggle the tree, you can see it's quite firm in the pot. It wiggles the whole surface of the soil, so I think it has quite a good root system in here. And maples, if I let this go for another year in the pot, it might become so pot bound that the tree will become unhealthy. So I'm going to get it out of the pot and we'll just see what the root system is like. Push it out from the drainage holes. Wow, it's quite firm in there. Here it comes. There I go. Wow, look at the roots on the bottom. It definitely is due for repotting. Here is a close-up look at that root system. Wow, that's a lot of growth in the bottom. Quite a mat of roots on the bottom here. In the upper part of the soil, the roots look like they're, not too pot bound. But definitely on the bottom there, that needs to be pruned away. And I'll balance the surface roots once I get the soil raked away. I'll begin up top on the tree, combing away the soil, exposing the roots. So my goal with this tree, I don't know what size it'll end up being, but I want to grow it slowly and carefully and keep the root base balanced, keep the surface roots looking good to create a really nice root base on the tree. A nice trunk line. And then, I can always grow it slowly and larger over the years. I'm not after one of those typical fat trunk Trident maples you see. I'm after a more realistic style for this maple. I find those exaggerated trunk Trident maples a bit cartoonish. All the features are exaggerated and it's just too much for me. I prefer a Trident maple that looks graceful and flowing and more realistic proportions. Here are some examples of Trident maples that are, in my opinion, so far removed from the reality of a natural tree that they become almost grotesque or cartoon-like. They're exaggerating certain features of the tree, like, for instance, the trunk taper or the root spread. And they're taking that one element of a natural tree and multiplying it by like a factor of 10 or 20 and exaggerating it to the point where it almost looks grotesque. Many of the examples will also have this single trunk that goes from a big thick root base, tapers up to a point at the top of the tree, and maples in nature do not grow that way. They always have multiple branches reaching up to the sky, and all the branches don't grow horizontally generally. They also reach upward to the sky. And you make this, maples are very graceful and flowing trees in nature. And these Trident maples in these examples are the exact opposite. They're ungraceful. They're like almost grotesque and ugly.
So when you're designing your Trident Maple or coming up with the concepts for it, don't just copy what you see out there in the bonsai world. Think about what you want your tree to look like. And if you're going to exaggerate features on the tree, well, decide how much you're going to exaggerate them. Are you going to exaggerate the trunk taper by 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%? You know, there's a line there that I think you can cross where your bonsai, instead of being a relatable tree, something that you would see in nature, you cross the line and it becomes this grotesque thing that you can't relate to because it doesn't look like a tree anymore. And I think a lot of these bonsai, especially Trident Maples, cross that line into the grotesque and cartoon-like form.
And occasionally you see some really nice Trident Maples that are, you know, graceful, good-looking trees, but more often you see the exaggerated trunk and cartoon trees that are just, you know, they look nothing like a tree growing in nature. They're a style in bonsai that's developed that's just, everyone copies it, and it's become the style for Trident Maples. And it kind of bothers me. It's like the black pines, especially the Shohin size. They always have these fat sumu trunks, and they look nothing like a real tree. They look like a bonsai. And I don't know why that style is so popular. I guess because, you know, it's impressive seeing that thick tapered trunk. But it's not what I look for in a tree. I tend to look for realistic proportions and branch structure. And it's not to say I don't like seeing those fat trunk Trident Maples. It's just, I don't know, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. They're all exact copies of each other. Oh, it's getting windy outside. And they don't look very graceful. They look very ugly, I think. Maples to me should be graceful looking, flowing branches, beautiful tapered trunks, but not over tapered, beautiful roots, not fat, ugly cartoon trees. And when I say cartoon, I'm not trying to be too insulting. I mean, cartoons are exaggerated forms of things you find in nature. If you take superheroes, for instance, you know, the cartoon drawings of superheroes are, you know, it's taking the human form and exaggerating it to the point where it's superhuman or unrealistic. And that's what most Trident Maples and bonsai are. They're exaggerated to the point where they're almost not recognizable as how the species grows in nature. So that's my thoughts on the styling of Trident Maples for today. So there's the root base combed out. So next I need to remove my drainage screen at the bottom and get this carpet of roots kind of separated. You can see they've grown round and round the pot. They're very, very long. And you can just cut them off, because I probably won't be using these long roots, but I'm keeping them for now just until I see what the root base is, and I'd rather see what I'm cutting off than just blindly go in and cut the bottom of the root system off. So this drainage screen is really tangled up in the roots. But I will get it out somehow. Wow, it's really in there. Oh. Is it ever in there? Something's grown through the drainage screen and thickened up. I think it's this root here. Okay, well, they may have to get cut away. So let me clean up here and then we'll come back and do the root pruning. Okay, it is time to begin the root pruning. So my first task is to get that drainage screen out. You can see the roots here that have grown through it. Wow. So I'm going to prune those off. My root plane is up higher, not down here, not my radial roots in the bottom, so off they come. I'm going to prune them away, releasing that drainage screen. Wow, they sure did grow through it. All right, let me cut off these long roots. In the end, I did end up cutting all those roots off the bottom anyway. So they're gone. Now, I still have my drainage screen caught underneath this root here. So I'll come in and do some more cutting. That looks like it's got it. Most of it anyway. Oh. Okay, the drainage screen is out. Okay, so I'll begin the root pruning up top, and then we'll get to those bottom roots later on, once I have my root plane established and all the surface roots looking good. So I will comb the roots out. The roots look good and healthy. So the reason I'm repotting this tree now is that it is starting to leaf out. The buds have all swollen. Some of them are leafing out already. So it's time to repot it. So my first step, I'm going to do a profile prune, getting rid of all these really long roots going around the tree, just to get it more compact. So lots of room to grow new roots in the pot after repotting. So that's a good start. Now let's look at the roots here. So I'm glad I worked on these roots because they're not ideal. I have roots coming from various planes. They're going different directions. If I had have left it another year, it would have been pot bound. The health of the tree may have suffered, and all these roots would have thickened up and made root correction even harder. Yeah, there's one wrapped around the bottom here. I gotta free up like that. picking out soil from the root base at the moment. Okay, now, so you can see I have a set of surface roots up here, and the trunk goes down deeper to the bottom here. And I have to decide, well, where am I going to grow my root plane? It's a difficult question. I have some high roots here. I've got lower roots down here. It's not a very kind of radial root plane. They're at different levels. So the question is, am I better to grow my root plane down low here and remove all these upper roots? Or am I better to grow the upper roots and remove the bottom part of the root plane? That is the question. And I'm trying to examine all these roots to come up with the answer. Just clearing out more soil. See, I already have, the trunk is already swelling at this plane. If I were to remove all these upper roots, it would correct itself eventually, the taper, but it is a difficult question to answer. I think I'm better to keep my upper roots and prune off the lower part of the root system. I think, I've got that swelling at the base here, or that flare, that trunk flare, and I should keep going with that. So what I'll do is I'll do a big cut on the bottom, removing this whole lower part of the trunk or roots. So I will come in with the big pruners and prune that off. So a big cut coming up here. Get that root out of there. All right, here I go. It is done. Pruning off the lower part, keeping my upper part. And I can come in with the concave pruners and just nibble that away, making it a little nicer of a cut once I get the soil out of here. Okay, so I'll come in and remove a little more, like that. Big cuts on this root system today. So there, I've got my root plane established. So let me clean up and then we'll come back and do the root pruning on this upper part. All right, looking at the root system now. So I've got this one kind of grows downwards, so I'm going to prune it off like that. There's another one over here growing downward. I'll prune that off short like that. And then what am I sitting on? There's a root here coming down. I'll prune that one off short. Trying to keep the root base flat on the bottom. And there's one here. So I'm starting to sit a little flatter. like it's hitting right here. Okay, so that's got the root base quite flat on the bottom now, which is nice. Now, I've got a root that kind of curls here. I better prune it away. Keeping my roots that flow nicely. This root flows nicely, but then it's got some roots sticking straight down from the bottom here that I'm going to prune away. Prune that back a little shorter. This one starts to go radial and then it takes a turn, so I'm going to prune the end off it. These ones are a bit 90 degrees, so I'll prune those away. 90 degrees to the radial direction. And then this one, this root here, you can see it has an upper part and a lower part, and I want it to flow down into the soil. This is too horizontal, so it comes off like that. There's part of a root that's growing upwards here. I'll prune that away. The same here, I've got a root kind of growing upwards that I'll prune back. And here, prune those back. Keeping everything flowing down gracefully into the soil, if possible. And I know this is taking a lot off, but they grow roots like crazy, these Trident maples. So it's not going to hurt the tree. It'll keep growing. Turn these back. Okay, this is getting quite nice, the root base now. Yeah, that's looking quite good. I think I'm pretty all ready for planting. There's just a root here that's springing down. Yeah, that's sitting really nicely now. So that's about all I could do to the root system with this repotting. And I've done a lot, as you can tell. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. I think I plant the tree and then see what develops. And just, keep going at it every year. So maybe, if I get more roots growing down here, I can eventually prune the higher ones off. Or yeah, just keep working with what you get. That's what bonsai is all about. Okay, it's time to get the tree planted now. Here is a look at the roots I took off compared to what's left on the tree. A lot of root mass, but the tree's strong. It'll regenerate new roots and grow quite well over the summer. I'm going to repot the tree in the same pot. It's a plastic pot, but it's a very interesting one, and it's a good size for the Trident maple. It should fill this pot up with roots by the end of summer, and then next year I can repeat this process. And hopefully the root system will just keep getting better and better. So I'll get the pot ready, get some drainage screens in the bottom, get a base layer of soil, and plant the tree. I have got my drainage screens in the bottom of the pot, so I'll add a base layer of soil now. Okay, next I'll place the tree in the pot. So I've got to find what I had as the front of the tree. I think it was somewhere about here, and this branch is kind of bothering me. I may take that off, but yeah, I think somewhere here is good. And I'll place it slightly off center, and I think in this case we'll go to the right hand side a bit. About there. I'll make sure my roots are combed out so they're nice and radial. Tapering down into the soil. Now let's check the height. The height is pretty good. So I'll fill in. Whoa! I'll fill in the tree now with soil so it doesn't tip over on me. Now I've got to make sure the tree is looking nice and straight up and down. I could tilt it back just a little bit. It's coming forward a little too much. I think that's better, yeah. And I'll add some more soil now. Okay, let me tamp that down and see what level my soil is at. Again, I just want it slightly below the lip of the pot. Do with a little more this end. So I've planted the tree so you just see a bit of that flare at the root base. But there's no exposed roots yet. It's too early. That root base still needs a lot of work and development to get it looking really good. But it is making progress. Okay, so that is ready for watering now. Let's just step back and have a look at it before I add the water in case I want to change my mind about the position in the pot. Here's a look at the tree in the pot. I think that position's looking good. So I'll give the tree a water now. All right, here I go with the water. It's coming out the drainage holes now. Now it's nice and clear. So that is good. I'll place some rocks on the surface of the soil just to hold the tree in place until the roots fill the pot. I got some good heavy rocks here. That should be good there. So that tree is repotted and ready to grow. You can see it's already starting to leaf out, so good time to repot it. I could have probably done it a few days earlier before these leaves started popping out, but better now than later. I'll spin the tree around so you can see it from all angles, and these shots are good for reference shots for when you're looking at the tree the next year. You can see how much it's developed in 1 year. So here's the front. So I'll rotate it around to the right hand side, to the back, the left hand side, and back to the front. It feels very strange repotting trees mid-February, but the tree's telling me it's time to repot it, so that's what I'm doing. I'll just have to make sure I keep it warm, keep it above freezing if possible, until spring comes. I have high confidence that the tree will grow well after that severe root pruning. Keep my fingers crossed. Anything can happen. So that's it for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.